In this video, we are going to learn how to do cold connections with rivets. So I have a few samples of metal that I am going to connect. I have a piece that I am going to finish them on. This strap of leather will turn into a keychain. And then I have a steel block to place them on and do some hammering later. I have two kinds of rivets. One is going to go specifically towards that leather piece, and then the other one is going to attach my metal to itself. So the copper rivets are for the metal, and then these other rivets have little caps on them and different colors for the leather. I have a pair of wire cutters and a pair of pliers if I need them, a file, flat or round will be fine, and then a ball peen hammer. I will also be punching a hole with that machine up towards the top, but we'll do that last. The first thing I'm going to do is I need to mark with Sharpie on my top piece of metal where I want my rivet to go. So I'm placing my metal together as it would be if it were attached. I'm going to make a little dot where I want that copper rivet to go first. So you always want to start with the top piece of metal. And now I need to go drill a hole with the drill press. So I'm going to be using an 18 gauge drill bit, which is the smallest drill bit. And if you need a refresher on how to drill a hole into metal, you can watch the YouTube video again, but just a reminder, I am making a dent with the awl so that the drill bit can catch that part in my metal using the proper awl with my ball peen hammer. Then I need to find a wood block, the chuck key to open it back up, and then I need to find an 18 gauge drill bit, so I'm using my little cheat sheet to find the smallest one right there. So I'm double checking, making sure I'm finding the right size. And you can always use the cheat sheet to check. But I'm going to put it back into the drill press, tighten it up. And then I'm going to drill my hole. Again, carefully watching my fingers, lining up the drill bit towards the center of the hole before I turn it on, turning it on, and then lowering it down to drill that hole. And remember, it is going to be sharp on the opposite side, so I will be filing it down after I'm done. So I'm switching the station to dirty, and then any tool that I use, remember, has to be sanitized before the next person, so I leave it all at the same station. Okay, so now I'm going to take that, file down the burr on the back so it's not super sharp. And it's okay if my metal right now is a little grungy and dirty, because we'll be sanding it and polishing it after we do the rivets. So I just want to make sure that my rivet fits inside of the drill hole. So if you did an 18, it should be a little tight, but still able to go through the metal like so. Sometimes your rivet will get stuck because it's so tight, so you can take your pliers and pull it out. Okay, so now I'm going to line up my top piece of metal towards the bottom piece of metal and take a Sharpie marker. You can use a thin one or a regular one, so long as it has a point. And I'm going to go through that top hole to leave a mark on my bottom piece of metal. So now I'll have to do the same thing to the bottom piece of metal, drill an 18 gauge hole that will match the top one. And because I was just the same person to use this station, it's okay that it says dirty right now. But you always want to make sure that it says clean before you get to the station. So same process again, making a little dent, drilling with that 18 gauge drill bit that I just used, and trying to keep the holes consistent so that the rivet will fit between the both of them. Okay, and it's already dirty, so leaving everything at that station, I'm going to go back to my spot and do the same thing I just did with the copper piece. So filing off the back side, checking the drill hole that I made to make sure that it is the right size and shape. And now I can line them up to put my rivet through them. So I always want my rivet to look nice from the front, especially if I'm going to add a keychain. So I'm going to leave the pre-made side with the circle on the outside. So that point will be on the back, like that. So I put it through the first piece of metal, and then I take my back piece of metal and slide it through that drill hole as well. You might need to use your pliers depending on if it's super tight. But I want it nice and flat, like so. And then I want to adjust it to make sure that it is the right orientation. Okay, so my rivet is a little long right now. I don't need quite all that metal sticking up. So this is where the wire cutters come in. I want to cut about half of that length off. So not all the way down to the end of the metal, but halfway of the remainder of what's sticking up. Just like that. So you want a little bit sticking up so we can flatten it down and connect it together. I do need to file it though because my cut is not even, and I want my rivet to still look professional. So I'm filing that, getting it nice and clean with no burrs on it. And I'm going to keep it on my steel block. And now I'm going to take my ball peen hammer and I'm going to use the rounded side first. The rounded side is going to keep my hammer nice and consistent. So I'm hammering down to flatten and smush the rest of that metal. And that is going to keep and connect my two pieces together. So I'm not whacking it extremely hard to dent it, but I am using enough force that the metal is changing and forming. So it's a little bit uglier on the back side, which is fine, no one's going to see it. On the front side, you have that nice finished piece of metal. So it is possible to move it and adjust it a little bit, but just know that you want to do that before you rivet it together. Like so. So it is connected, it's not loose, it's not wiggly. Now I could use the flat side to make sure that it is extra flat. Okay, so there's my rivet. I riveted two pieces of metal together with a copper rivet. So now I am going to talk about the next kind of rivet. We use these copper ones for your metal. We are going to be using these ones for your leather strap if you are doing a cold connection with another material. So these ones have caps. They have different sizes and colors as well. And we're going to be using a punch to make some holes so we can attach my metal to the leather. So this is a keychain. It has a key ring. I'm going to be using one rivet for my metal to attach it to the leather, and then another rivet to close off the keychain. So I need two of those pre-made rivets with the caps. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I lined it up on the leather, and I'm going to draw a hole where I want to make my punch. Now this punch is different than a drill press. It will cut through the leather and the metal as well. So this punch is set at 1/8 of an inch for the punch, and this will fit perfectly for the rivets that I have chosen. So I will set this up for you because it's a little bit tricky, but I raise it to open up the punch and then lower it to make the punch through the metal or the leather. So I'm going to set those aside. It is very heavy and kind of clunky at first. So you want to open it up as far as you can, and then you're going to slide your metal in between and slowly lower it so that it lands right on that mark that you make. I'm not going to punch directly through it because I want to make sure it's right where I want it. Okay, so still with it lowered, I am then going to press as hard as I can all the way through, and then I need to pull it out so the metal pops out. And you will have a tiny little punch. Much easier than drilling a hole. This, again, doesn't work for everything, but in this case it will work pretty well for the leather. So after I punch it through the metal, I'm going to do the same thing with the leather, but I need to take a Sharpie and make a little mark where I want that hole to go so it fits with my design. Okay, so I don't have to change anything out. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to open it right up. I am going to take my leather, lower down that punch very slowly and line it up. And then where I have it where I want it, I'm going to press all the way through, pull all the way out again, and I should have a hole in my leather that matches the one in my metal. Pretty easy. Okay, so this next step, I'm going to close off my keychain so it's a little loop. So I will need a pre-made rivet with a cap from that box with all the different colors. I'm going to take it like I did with the other rivet, except now I'm going to put the cap on it that corresponds. So I want it on the steel block again, and then I'm going to take the flat part and hammer it as far down as I possibly can on this side. The cap is going to close it shut and form around like so. So that is one way to do a rivet, and then I can loop that keychain right through that opening. Okay, so I have polished and sanded my piece and done a heat patina. It is finished as a piece of metal. So this is the last step of my entire project, is to rivet it to the surface. Because if I try to do it afterwards, I might ruin my leather, and I don't want to do that. So I'm trying not to touch my metal a lot because I don't want a ton of fingerprints. But I'm going to use the rivets with the caps again, putting the rivet through the metal, or I'm sorry, the leather and then the metal, like so. And then I put the cap on, line it up where I want it. Just like that. I'm going to hold my metal down and then hit it with the ball peen hammer on the flat side. That steel block is going to smush the bottom side, but I can also flip it around. I just want to be careful not to scratch or dent my metal once it is finished, because that heat patina and that polish could come off very easily. Then I move it a little bit if it came and became crooked, and making sure it's nice and secure. Alright, so this is my finished product. 2 different kinds of rivets, a keychain, and then all those other techniques combined. So good luck riveting!